Hello, everybody. As I am digging deeper into what the careers of the future will look like, I'm thrilled to have with us Mr. Praveer Sinha, the CEO and MD of the Tata Power Company Limited. He stands as a visionary leader with almost 4 decades of illustrious experience in revolutionizing the power sector landscape. He's armed with a master's degree in business law from the esteemed National Law School in Bangalore, coupled with a PhD in smart grid technologies from the Indian Institute of Technology. He is also a visiting scholar at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT in Boston in America. Mr. Sinha embodies a rare blend of legal acumen and technical expertise and believes that sustainable is absolutely attainable. So we're going to talk to him about how he emerges as a beacon of inspiration, reshaping the contours of the power sector and paving the way for a brighter and more sustainable future for all of us. So firstly, Mr. Sinha, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for all the work you do to make the world literally brighter for all of us. So thank you for all your contributions to the world and society. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Vibha. And it's such a pleasure to be here on this show. And thank you for your kind words.
Terrific. So, Mr. Sinha, to just start the conversation, just to warm up, as you sit at the helm of such a large organization with so much impact, why, when you're sitting at this vantage point, would you even think about the future? Why is it important for CEOs to think about the future?
I think we all have a huge responsibility, and climate change is something which impacts everyone, whether it is in cities or in villages. And the company, the Tata Power Company, was set up with a vision to provide clean and abundant and I would say economical cost power in large quantity to the people and consumers. In fact, more than 100 years back, 109 years back, the first hydro plant was set up. And the founder himself, when he used to stay in Mumbai, at that time, there were large number of textile mills in Mumbai and there was huge amount of pollution. And that's when he thought that we need to bring clean energy. So I think for us, it's about leadership both in thought and action. And we owe it to our future generations that how do we produce energy in an efficient manner, in a benign manner to environment, and also how do we use it in a responsible way so that the country and people can prosper.
Okay, I think that's a very beautiful opening to this conversation. So you're thinking about the future as your responsibility. You're like,
Yes.
we owe this to the generations that are coming. It's sort of our moral responsibility, our corporate and social responsibility, and we need to look at the future from that lens. Okay, terrific. Now, as you look at the future from this lens of responsibility, what are factors that you're seeing influence the future? Let's take sustainability, since you talked about that. Tell me a little bit about sustainability. I've seen on the website that you're committed to hitting net zero by 2045. How is that going to happen?
So a few years back, we took a stand that we need to be the first one to come up with our aspiration to become net zero. At that time, we said that we will become net zero by 2050. But subsequently, when we went on the drawing board, we came up with 2045. And that's because there are some plants where we have the purchase obligations and supply obligations. And those will get over around that period of time. So we are very committed, first of all, that we will not put any brown coal-based power plant. Secondly, we will only do new additions in clean energy, whether it is through pumped hydro or other hydro plants, or through solar, wind, and a combination of solar, wind, and storage and pumped hydro. So our whole focus has been that we need to be future ready, and how do we produce power in a clean way so that we can offer reliable, resilient, and secure power to the consumers.
Okay, so currently, from your entire mix of capacity, from what I've understood, around 40% comes from green sources. Is that the figure?
Yeah, absolutely right. So we already have large number of solar and wind, And we also have hydro plants and off gas. So altogether, we are 40%, and we expect that by the end of this decade, by 2030, we would be around 70%. And that's what is our target, that how do we move more towards clean energy solutions. And when we talk of clean energy, let me also cover that clean energy is intermittent. So how do we make it 24/7? How do we make it in such a way that any time of the day you require clean energy, you will get it. And many solutions that we are developing will help in ensuring that you get 24/7 clean energy, and not just when the sun is up or when the wind is blowing.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about those solutions? Like what kind of innovation is going on, either at your firm or just generally globally? What are energy companies doing to be able to have this 24/7 power grid supply? How does it work?
So first of all, today we have large number of solar plants and wind plants, and we are fortunate in India that we have more than 330 days of sunshine, and also many parts of the country have very good wind speeds. So there is today a huge traction of combining them and making them hybrid solution. The solar typically is during the daytime from 8 to 5, and wind typically is again late afternoon, say from 3 o'clock to midnight. Of course, these are seasonal. Wind plants are seasonal. It's not that it's there right through the year. And to make it 24/7 right through the year, you need to bring storage solutions. And some of the storage solutions are electrochemical storage solutions, which are battery solutions. We've seen a lot of lithium-ion batteries have been there. But there are a number of other chemistries which are being developed, whether it is sodium, vanadium, flow batteries, or manganese liquid. So there is a whole lot of research that is happening globally, as also in our country, to see that how for different applications, and especially we are talking of stationary applications, we can have better and efficient battery solutions, and they are also cost effective. Apart from that, hydro plants support these type of intermittent power. Also, pumped hydro, wherein what you do is in a closed loop, you pump up the water during periods when you have excess power, and when you have shortage of power, especially during peak times in the evening and afternoon, you can generate through the pumped hydro plants. So I think a whole lot of work is happening. Also, we see globally that we are now getting into using more of nuclear power. The small modular nuclear reactors are becoming quite efficient and effective. We think that that can be a good backup for providing clean energy solutions. So I think there are a whole lot of research work that is happening globally, and I don't think we ever had such an opportunity in last 100 years as we see today in our urge to provide clean energy.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that. So we're going from 40% to roughly 70% in the next 7 years or so, and then moving to 100% in the next 15 years after that.
Absolutely right. And I think that is because the new plants we are putting are only clean energy solutions, and these are combinations of solar, wind, pumped hydro, or battery storage. The old plants, which are all the coal-based plants, they will have an end of life once their PPAs get over, and we do not propose to extend them. So I think over a period of time, we will have virtually 100% generation. And these are, mind you, generations which will be 24/7. It's not going to be just for a few hours, because ultimately the consumer demand, whether it is in urban areas or it is in factories, offices, shops, or it is in rural areas, they need when they want
When
the
they
power.
want it, right? It's on demand, yes.
Absolutely, and that I think is going to happen. Also, there is one more area where I think there has been huge amount of work, and that's is about digital technology.
Mhm.
So, what the big transformation that we have seen in last 20 years, and this happened after more than 100 years of traditional way of producing energy and transmitting and distributing, is that today we are able to, one is do decentralized generation. That means you can do it in cities, you can do it in villages. Secondly, we can also use digital technology for using the data on real-time basis. So we earlier used to have a unidirectional flow of power with no data. Now we have bidirectional or multidirectional flow of power and multidirectional flow of data on real-time basis. So you can now effectively understand that how is the utilization pattern of various types of consumers. Like offices will have typically requirement of power during daytime and maybe not very late and beyond 9 o'clock. So they don't have too much of requirement, but industries will have 24/7.
So you're saying you can redirect the power basis the requirements on different localities and zones?
Absolutely right. That's the way it is managed. So during daytime, people go to work, so residential requirement reduces drastically, but the office requirement and shopping areas and all that, their requirement increases. So I think there is a much better understanding in utilization of power and the smart grid technology that people talk of. That how do we make the grid more intelligent, whereby it is able to identify locations where you have more consumption and thereby supply more. And those places where they are less, you unnecessarily don't supply in those areas.
Okay, is how does smart grid technology, since you have your PhD in this area, how has it evolved over time? Very simplistic understanding is that there's just osmosis of, moving from a higher concentration to lower concentration and back. But how does this technology actually evolve, and where do you see the technology evolving to in the future? What is happening with this technology?
So basically, it is about efficient and intelligent use of power. And what it means is that where you do not require power, you do not supply so much, or you can manage the supply. And just for giving you an example, you have typically shopping malls. Now, shopping malls during daytime are not very much utilized. The footfalls are much less, but evening time is much more. So during the daytime, you can just have two elevators or two escalators, and you need not have a cooling to the extent that people feel cold over there. So you can have 22-degree, 24.
Okay, so
And
it manages the flow also. It will say, let's shut down two elevators, let's
yeah,
reduce lighting systems here. So it's
absolutely.
integrated. Okay.
And we have done very good experiments on this in shopping malls, in factories, also in the metro train service. We realized that the maximum footfall is in the morning from 8 to 11,
Sure.
and
Okay.
then it's from 4:30 to 8:30.
Okay.
So you only run few elevators, escalators that time.
Okay.
Control your temperature also in such a way that unnecessarily you don't keep the temperature very low during such periods. So I think there are many smart and intelligent ways of doing it. And
Okay. Since you talked about moving to from 40 to 70 to 100, can you talk to us a little bit about the cost benefit analysis of moving? What happens when a country or an organization moves to renewable energy? What happens to the cost benefit analyses, the ratios, the investments, the returns? How does the math and the accounting change?
so one is that yes, you will have to do investment in that, but the investment starts giving you returns very quickly, because the time that you take to set up a solar plant or a wind plant is much shorter compared to coal-based or hydro-based plant. So the cost is to that extent, your interest during construction cost comes down. Secondly, the cost of this power is virtually flat, unlike a coal-based plant where or gas-based plant where you keep on buying coal and the cost keeps on going up.
So there's no raw material cost. The raw
Yeah, there's
material.
no raw material. God has been kind, and there is enough sunshine or there's enough wind speed. And to that extent, there is much more certainty that for next 20, 25, 30 years, you will have a fixed cost of power and not that it
What,
will
what
vary
about the
based.
initial capex compared to a coal plant for the solar plant?
So initial capex is also little less. So it's not that it is so expensive. And with the type of penetration of solar and wind and other renewables that is happening, there is improvement in technology, and then cost efficiencies have come down, and scale is giving the benefit. And we have seen it in our country itself that over a period of time, the cost of solar and wind have come down drastically, and we are also seeing the cost of storage is coming down. And I do expect that in next 5 to 7 years, it will become very, very low cost. And I think it is good for environment, it is good for consumers, it is good for the government, and it ticks all the right boxes for the type of interventions that are happening to promote
Just
the
to
renewable
get
energy.
an idea now on a like-to-like basis, if I were to compare the costing, if you just give us very simplistically just coal-based, solar, wind, and hydro, what is the difference in the cost? Maybe just the investment cost and
Yeah.
the usage.
So I think the cost of solar is about 5 rupees or 5 crores per megawatt, while the cost of a thermal plant will be about 7 to 8 crores, and the
Mhm.
cost of hydro, of course, is 10. But the good thing about hydro is that once you have put the cost, there is no variable cost. Similarly, in solar, there is no variable cost. There is no raw material cost that you need to pay. While in coal, while it is 7 crores per megawatt, it would also require the cost of coal or gas to be added to it, which
Okay.
makes it rightfully.
Okay, great. And in terms of these rates you're giving us, how much of this currently is supported by government subsidies? I know there was a massive thrust. Initially, they were giving land swaps, they were giving tax rebates, all sorts of benefits. Where are we seeing those benefits today? And where do you see those sort of government support, subsidies, handouts in the next 10 years or so? How much of this is sort of policy led and supported, and at what point will we become independent of these subsidies and policies?
So the government does not provide any capital subsidy for setting up of these plants. So the capital has to be invested by the project developer. But if you are doing solar plant and you are using it for a residential purpose or for even for government offices and all that, there is a certain subsidy that the government provides to the consumers, like the recent program of Prime Minister Saurya, uh, Ujja program, where they want 1 crore homes to be lighted up with solar power. But these are very small sizes, 1, 2, and 3 kilowatt units. And there they are providing them subsidy if you set it up. And this is to encourage distributed generation, whereby the consumer not only is a user of energy, but also is a producer of energy. And to that extent, they become prosumers, which makes them much more comfortable to use energy and sell it also in the grid.
Okay, so there was no subsidies on land provided, and there's no subsidies on income tax. You pay
Yeah,
as nothing.
and no capital subsidy. There are some depreciation benefits and
Okay.
some transmission charges, but those are not very substantial.
Okay, so you don't see this as a massive policy thrust. This is it. It sounds like more you as an organization have decided that you want to do this. It's not coming from either the consumer or the government. This is a sort of a more corporate decision.
That is there, but there is a government support in terms of that they are enforcing that every state utility should consume or procure certain quantity of renewable power. So
Okay.
there is something known as a renewable purchase obligation, which is becoming mandatory for all the states. So to that extent, the capacity add and the penetration of renewable will increase,
Mhm.
because if you do not do it, there will be a penalty imposed on them. Right now, it's not there, but the government is working towards a plan towards
Okay.
imposing penalty.
What's kind of interesting as an outsider to the industry is when if this shift that you're talking about happens, it completely changes the geopolitics of India, because we then become sort of an isolated, self-sustaining nation where we're not dependent on other countries. The imports change, the entire sort of reserves of the country will change. It seems to have lots of ramifications on the overall economy of India, because currently we're a net importer of oil, right? And the largest part of our export bill is oil. Now, if this sort of shift comes through, is this going to radically change sort of India's position in the world order, and will we truly become a sort of self-sustaining energy nation?
Absolutely, and I think we are fortunate that because of our weather conditions, we have a large number of solar days and good wind days also. And we have, of course, not exploited the offshore wind, which can be put in the sea. So I think this is a very, very big thing that can happen. And when we talk of energy or electricity, we also see that the mobility is also moving towards electrical vehicles, and these are it is two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, or public transport, or even transportation commercial vehicles. So I think this is a very good trend and a very good change, and I think the disruption that is happening in this space will transform the way energy will be used 20 years or 30 years hence. And I think there is also a necessity, because climate change is a reality, and we need to move away from the brown fuels and the oil and gas to many of these other solutions which are more benign to the environment.
Okay, since you touched upon electric vehicles, when we are reading and doing these interviews, we're getting sort of mixed signals about electric vehicles. There seems to be a camp that's firm believer we should move towards electric vehicles. This is sort of where the nation should go. And then there are people who are very skeptical, saying, well, the grids and all I'm using charging stations that are all fed by conventional power plants. So if I'm feeding my car, sort of, if I'm charging on conventional, then how is this really a sustainable vehicle? So where are you on this debate? And, what would you say to the naysayers when they say this?
So I think disruption is always a challenge. People want to have status quo ante, and they don't want to move away from the way they have been doing work and business. I think as a responsible citizens, not only just corporates, we owe it to our children, and we need to look at opportunities and solutions which are much more better for the future. There is no issue in the grid, and if there are issues, it can be tackled. Let's not over kill this issue and say that it will impact the grid. Secondly, the energy supply to the grid itself is undergoing a transformation. Today, nearly 15% of the energy that goes to the grid is clean energy. And India has a very ambitious target that by 2030, nearly 50% of this energy will be clean energy.
Okay.
And that by 2040 or 45, we can have maybe, when we say 100%, maybe 95% will be clean energy. So I think people should not unnecessarily become naysayers and create fear in the minds of people.
Okay.
There are very smart people working on many solutions, and I can tell you, I work with many of them globally on cutting edge technologies. It will surprise everyone the type of solutions that will come in next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, terrific. Okay, that sounds very optimistic. And if the move is coming towards making the grids sustainable, then of course, then that sort of completely negates their argument. Last question on this part, and then we'll move on. What is happening? If you could give us a sense of what is happening worldwide. You've given us a good sense of where India is. Where are the developed nations in this race to net zero? Who's leading the charge? What is happening in the sort of larger global players? What's happening in the US, broadly Europe, China, India? What is going on? Who's ahead in the race? Who's behind the race? Is there a global body that's sort of governing who's doing what, or is this sort of a national subject with each country managing its own affairs?
So let me give you last year Bloomberg data. that last year globally 1.7 trillion was spent in clean energy solutions, which includes setting up of renewable plants, transmission system for renewable power, also electric vehicle, how the penetration of electric. Out of this 1.7 trillion, nearly 600 billion was spent in China. So China is, of course, by far the biggest and the most progressive as far as clean energy solutions and clean energy transition is concerned. Then, of course, comes the US with something like 300 billion. And then all others are very, very small players because their size of the business.
Economies are smaller. Yeah.
India, we are 17 billion. So we have a lot of catch up to do with various countries. And many of the places in Europe are very progressive. The Nordic countries are very progressive about it. Their fleet transition as well as their power transition is happening. Of course, they are fortunate that most of their power comes from hydropower plants, so they don't use any coal. Similarly, many of the plants in Europe, especially Germany and France. France again is 100 is a very large quantum of nuclear power. UK are moving away from coal, and it is very, very minuscule in terms of the quantity. US also, I think, is progressing towards. US, of course, uses huge amount of gas, including shale gas. But definitely now there is a huge movement globally that clean energy will become the new reality. And I think the writing is very much on the wall, and we need to move towards that and support this initiative rather than trying to push it.
Okay. And is there a global governance agency, a body that's sort of monitoring, mapping, calculating, or is this a national agenda?
It is a national, but International Energy Agency is there that monitors and brings out the reports. Also, the IPCC is there, which talks about the climate change and how the 1.5 degree we have already reached in many places, and how it is going to lead to huge climate disruptions that we are seeing. We have seen that in last 20 years, that the extreme weather patterns which are being seen. And it will have a very, very adverse impact, which will be irreversible going forward. So I think the sooner we transform and change, and it cannot be just one country, but everyone globally speaking in the right direction, it would be very difficult for us to make it a movement which impacts everyone. So if anything happens in Arctic and Antarctic, we also get impacted as any of the island countries or any of the other countries in Europe or US.
Okay. So this is sort of more self-led, nation-led. There is no governance, or there's no global governance going on, and there's no governing agency that's saying this is what everybody needs to do. There's nothing like that happening right now.
No, it's there. It's the COP, which is there. They have been talking about it. Of course, it started way back in 1988 when the Kyoto Protocol was signed. And while every country has been talking, the last big one where people really got worried was the Paris Treaty in 2015 December. Since then, a lot of discussions have happened. There's a lot of awareness. The G20 meetings have been taking it in as a very, very important agenda item. So today, sustainability and clean energy and climate change are all intertwined. And this is something which is impacting everyone. And I think for us, the time is running out, and we need to enhance the speed at which the change.
What about from like the shareholder perspective? Are there certain indices, like the MSCI index? Are there certain indices that you can only belong to depending on your energy consumption and sort of where you sit on the sustainable? Like, is that also a drive for corporations to be included in the sort of sustainability bucket? Is that happening?
Yeah, so there are monitoring mechanisms today. So as a part of governance, you need to prepare integrated report, and you are monitored based whether it is S&P or MSCI or very many other agencies who monitor companies based on their performance. There are also today lenders and private equity funds who only finance companies which are into clean energy, and they have separate identified funds, and these are very, very large funds which they only invest in clean
Yeah.
energy
Okay.
and sustainable solution. So I think this is something which is being very closely monitored and followed by everyone.
Okay, great. Okay. Because the minute it becomes sort of a little bit, once the financing also starts getting affected, or it becomes at least a factor in play, I think that also becomes a driver. Let's talk a little bit about AI. There's AI is everywhere, it's affecting so many different industries. Where are you seeing AI affect your industry? Either at the plant level, at the data level, or just generally in the office? How much AI adoption are you seeing, and where do you see that AI adoption moving to?
So AI is a very, very integral of all the businesses that we are doing, whether it is a coal-based plant in terms of how the coal is sourced from various mines, what are their chemical properties, how do do the firing of it, make it more efficient, to the renewable plants where you would see on a real-time basis how the generation is happening, if through drone photographs and others, what are the hotspots, what sort of preventive measures you need to take, what sort of changes, condition-based monitoring you need to do. And so also for every aspect of the power sector, you have to do a lot of data analytics and a lot of usage of artificial intelligence is there to support you in your decision making. As I mentioned to you that today it's a real-time flow of data that happens, and the analytics of that is very, very important. So this is an area which the power sector has been using, and so many other, whether it is consumer-related services or even consumption pattern and planning and all that. So I think today it is very much embedded in the way the power sector works, and AI is a very, very integral part of the way we carry out our work. And I see more and more of integration and services which are being offered using AI solutions.
Okay, great. So, you talked to us about this vision. You've given us a sense of the investments and a serious responsibility, as well as a mission to accomplish this. What might come in between your vision today and 2045? What are some of those sort of concerns, red flags, issues that you see as if I need these 4 or 5 things to align, what are those things that you need an alignment in? What are some of those sort of tipping points that might not allow us to get where we want to get? What are the concerns?
I don't think there's anything that will not allow us to. I think the sector is going through a lot of unlearning and relearning, and there are a whole lot of technology and business changes which are happening. And I think to make the clean energy really sustainable in the long term, you need to have very good solutions for storage so that it becomes 24/7 power. Now, it can be mechanical, electromechanical, electrochemical, thermal, any type of solutions which are cost efficient and can have scale will be required. And this is not either or, but it is and that needs to be done. Secondly, I think the intelligence will come in a big way, and analytics and supply of energy will become more as a service and a solution rather than just a product which was being given to the people. So there will be more decentralization, more engagement, and more of technology intervention. And I keep on saying that there will be more socialization of energy, there will be more democratization of energy, and universal access of energy, which has always been a challenge. And even now, there are nearly more than 1 billion people globally who do not have access. This will become a reality, and those who were not in the mainstream and were getting either partial or no access will start getting access. So I think there is a lot of things which are happening, especially in terms of research work. And I'm very confident that next 20 years will be a phenomenal in terms of the power sector. What we didn't see for last 100 years when after Thomas Alva Edison found energy, you will see that happening in next 20 years.
Can we touch upon your last point because it's very relevant? How will you get that 1 billion unserviced population within the ambit of being serviced now? How is that shift going to happen?
So many of these solutions, we are ourselves working on it, on how do you develop these microgrids. And what is important is, again, these microgrids have to be sustainable, affordable, and scalable. And what we have seen is that there have been interventions, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and other places, including very many parts of India, where access in villages are not very reliable because of the challenge in supply and the pricing concept, whereby those who are lifeline consumers are not asked to pay the market charges. So there, the microgrid solutions, which is with solar and storage and maybe bio CNG or some of the local ways in which energy can be produced as a backup, can be given instead of the DG sector, which is traditionally used in many places. And these solutions, I think we are in quite advanced stage. There's a lot of startups and other companies who are working on very many alternate solutions. And once the affordability improves, the cost improves, then they will become self-sustainable. Then you don't have to ask for any grant or any funding support, but do it on the merit and on the commercial business lines of the business.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm glad there is there is this inclusive sort of mindset, even from somebody at your position, that you are thinking of that underserviced, non-serviced segment as well. Let's move to the last segment of this conversation, which is around skilling and careers of the future, and then we'll wrap up. When somebody young wants to enter this sort of sector, either they want to work in the energy sector or in terms of engineering, what kind of skills would you suggest that they work on? What are sort of skills for the future?
So it depends. If you are setting up of a plant, a manufacturing plant, then you need a different type of skill sets because those are automated machines. And just to give you an example, we recently set up a 4 gigawatt solar module and cell plant in Tamil Nadu. And you need nearly 2,000 operators, and you need to get kids from the colleges, from ITIs, or even if they have done graduation, you bring them and provide them the skill sets. In fact, in our new plant, out of 2,000, nearly 80% of them are women operators, and they are all from nearby villages within 50 kilometers of radius of those of the plant. And they were raw kids. They didn't have any experience, but over the 6 months, we provided them on-the-job training and operator skill sets, and also skill sets on basic safety and how you do work properly. And I think they are doing very well. If you go today, they can explain you like any knowledgeable engineer how they run the plant and how they run the machines. So I think it's a question of how do you train them. And similarly, we set up these solar plants in various parts of the country. These are all remote locations. You have local children who come over there for working, and these are either graduates or ITI or diploma engineers, and they are trained and they become very efficient. So there has to be a specific program in Tata Power, and I know very many others also. We can have skill training centers where we provide them the right type of skills for running and operating these plants, as also for the manufacture of it. Also, I think,
let's assume I'm an engineer studying at one of the top engineering colleges. Since you went to IIT, let's take IIT. Is that enough? Like, is that the kind of skill set you're looking for as you hire for the future, a core engineering degree? Is that sufficient, or would you want any more layers on top of that core engineering degree if you're hiring from here?
So when I look at engineers from IIT or any of the good engineering institutes, I'm looking for people who will go and do more of advanced engineering work and research and all that. I'm not looking for them to go and set up the plant in the field or set up the solar or wind utilities in the remote locations, because the skill sets over there are very different. A diploma engineer or even an ITI trained can be skilled for doing that. But engineering graduates, we would only like them to work on more of doing research related work. Also, if they have other skill sets in terms of planning and overall engineering and design, they can do that. Or if they have a flair for marketing and sales, they can. But I think today you don't need engineers to go and run these plants in remote locations. The diploma engineers and the ITI technicians are, I think, quite
My
qualified.
question was more like, having you, since you studied engineering yourself some years ago, if today you're trying to build an engineer for the future, is just the hard skills of engineering, is that sufficient? Or would you need layers of understanding AI, digital data transformation, any other skills, the ethical skills, sustainability, environment? I mean, there's so many fields, right, that are now sort of getting factored into how you run the organization. Do you see these as essential skills, or it's not really required? You just learn the hard skills of engineering and come?
I think you require all these. Today it is inbuilt. So today you cannot become an electrical engineer and work in power sector and not know about artificial intelligence, data analytics, or for that matter, anyone, even a finance CA or MBA. They need to understand, because in every application you need to have understanding of analytics and artificial intelligence. Similarly, you need to have now a full 360-degree view on sustainability and on the various other aspects relating to providing better work conditions, not only for your own employees, but also for the community that you work in. So I think today well-rounded engineers are much more required than just specific area. Specific area engineers are required for research work, and that again is phenomenal. The type of work that I see happening globally and as also in the country, whether it is on storage solutions or making these solar panels more efficient, alternate ways of producing these solar panels, not the traditional silicon chip manufacture, but using organic materials or nanotechnology or any of the other new ways that in which like peroxides and all that. So I think the requirement is very different. You need to actually specialize. Just a general engineer may not be the only right thing. You need to upskill yourself, then only you will be able to add value to the organization.
Okay. And with so much change coming and this shift coming, what's going to happen to careers in the sector? I'm sure you're already seeing sort of winds of change in terms of new careers evolving. If someone's in high school or college today, it sounds like they should be optimistic about working in sustainability or the energy sector. What sort of careers will come through? And if this mix really changes from 30 to 70 to 100, what does that mean for jobs? What happens to the job landscape? What comes and what goes?
So first is the demand. And today, India's per capita consumption of electricity is one of the lowest in the world. It's just 1,200 units. The world average is 3,000. China is 5,000. And of course, the developed OECD countries are in 15 to 20,000 units. So there is a huge potential and a demand in the next 15, 20 years. So this is next few decades are decades of India in terms of energy. And with the type of temperature rise that you are seeing, the type of more affordability amongst people, more and more electrical equipment and more energy will be required. So per se, there is a great opportunity. Secondly, there are a whole lot of technology and new work ways in which energy can be produced and used. And people have to now learn. And I'll tell you that as an electrical engineer, I never knew about telecom technology. But many years back, when I started working in smart grid, uh, I had to, for the first time, study about telecom technology, because uh, real-time communication is a very important, and what sort of latency is there in your communication system. It cannot be like a call drop, because if the energy supply is going and it drops, then you can imagine that you can have a huge challenge. So I think it is very important now that disciplinary study has to be done, and one just cannot be restricted in one area until unless you want to do research and you want to have expertise in that specific field.
And obviously, new careers will open up in solar, wind, hydro, all these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, when we talk of hydro today, hydro has to be combined with solar and wind. So you need to have understanding that how the flow of power takes place, and how the generation profile is there, and how the consumption profile is there, so that you produce in such a way that you are able to meet the 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 load profile or the consumption profile, and not just produce and not utilize that energy.
Okay, terrific. Okay, on that note of optimism, I think it's a great way to end the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And I honestly, I just feel really good after having this conversation. I feel like the country is in very responsible hands, and the way you explained what is going on, and honestly where we are going to move to, and the drivers for that, it makes me feel assured that we are headed in the right direction. Also very optimistic for young people, in that there will be a lot of new careers emerging in the energy space, in the sustainability space. And also all the horror we read in the newspapers, and we see the poles melting, etc. But I know that there is some concentrated, very decisive action being taken to address these very real problems. So thank you. Again, thank you for all the work that you're doing, and look forward to keeping you posted on the progress we make on the book. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Vibha, and all the best for your book, and all the best to all the kids who want to get into power sector.
Okay, terrific. All right. Thank you so much.